Thank you everyone so much for being here tonight. This is going to be just a brief introduction. You've all, I think, seen Diane's biography. Sometime last year, I was very privileged to be invited to the Imperial War Museum as part of a consultation that they are conducting as we speak with a variety of different communities, but as you might imagine, predominantly with the Jewish community, as they seek to redevelop their Holocaust galleries. And it was there for the first time that I met Diane Lees. And it just felt like such a natural synergy for us here as we celebrate the 60th anniversary of Leo Baeck College. And so much of our history really does come out of those traumatic events of the Holocaust. Rabbi Dr. Leo Baeck himself as a survivor, but also, of course, Rabbi van der Zil, who set up the college as a survivor of those events in many ways. It felt like a real moment to connect our institutions. So I'm very privileged to invite Diane Lees this evening to be our speaker. She's the Director General of the Imperial War Museum since 2008, which is the museums themselves are the cultural lead for the centenary of the First World War. I know she might not be a household name to some of you, though I think she probably should be, but a lot of the projects that she's worked on are probably part of your household experiences, so to speak. She was previously the director of the V&A's Museum of Childhood in Bethnal Green, which I'm sure many of you have visited, and she's also worked on the rescue and relocation of the hat block manufacturers workshop in central Manchester, which I'm sure will be a great outing for some of our Manchester-based communities. And perhaps dearest to, I know, some of my family members' hearts was the recovery and display of the Mary Rose flagship in Portsmouth Harbour. She's also a member of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust Experts Reference Group. And in 2014, she's awarded a CBE in the Queen's New Year's Honours List for her services to museums. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Diane Lees to speak to us this evening.
Thank you. It's getting late, isn't it? So I'll be brief. Thank you so much. It's such an honour to be here. I think I wanted to start off just by saying one thing, which is how history is so important and how understanding of the past is critical in moving us towards a better future. And I think that was echoed brilliantly in Nolene's introduction to this evening and probably gives you some indication of where we feel our synergy even more deeply. Apart from the fact that I have to say that Deborah and I had a girl bonding moment and a conversation about women in leadership. But we won't repeat that in public ears. So it's wonderful and it's a great relationship. So I'm deeply honoured to be here speaking to you on the occasion of the 60th anniversary, and we reflect on all that's been achieved since the foundation was founded in 1956, as you've heard, and how important it is that the college continues to play a role as a centre of academic excellence and rabbinic training. So, as you've heard in the film, Leo Baeck College has evolved considerably since the first 2 students were admitted in 1956. And to an organisation that supported and guided an amazing 182 rabbis and trained hundreds of religious school teachers and progressive Jewish educators to work with primary and secondary school children and created a really successful adult learning programme. Like our organisation, the college seeks to make accessible a significant collection, as you've heard, 60,000 items. I have that real empathy when I see a library. There is a certain, what we call the museum smell. There's a whole scent to those books that is about our history and our learning and our shared humanity that I think is really, really special. So get your checkbooks out for that library because I think it's just an amazing collection. And it should be seen by more people, although I have nagged Deborah on that point already. It's an incredible organisation. So obviously, the theme for this evening is this is about regeneration and a fundraising campaign to ensure that the college remains at the forefront of Jewish education. And by creating that sustainable future for the college through endowing faculty and by building a lasting fund for the stability of the core work of the institution. And that will enable them to partner with organisations like ours. So these are challenges and aspirations that we share. I can closely identify with my role as Director General of Imperial War Museums that there is always a continuous need for a continuous response to changing circumstances in the world and being flexible and responsive where needed. So this year marks our own anniversary, the centenary of the museum, which was established in 1917 whilst the First World War was still being fought. Since our foundation 100 years ago, we've led a mission of developing and communicating a deeper understanding of the causes, the course, and the consequences of war. As we enter our second centenary, our vision is to help people as global citizens to make sense of an increasingly unpredictable world. We do this in part by helping people have a deeper understanding of the connections between past conflict and the contemporary world. We explore the way in which war has shaped the local and the global. We invite and appreciate diverse views, and we strive to challenge our audiences to become ready to engage in the difficult issues and decisions which affect themselves, their communities, and their world. Later this year, we will launch the IWM Institute for the Public Understanding of War and Conflict, bringing together our research, expertise and public programme so that we are able to demonstrate our impact in the broadest sense and on an international platform. Through the Institute, we will maximise the impact of our global citizenship research activities by creating and nurturing partners in higher education and the third sector, again, part of our partnership with the college. This will help us pioneer new thinking, spark and lead debate and build support for all of our activities and programmes. And I see a strong link between our vision for IWM and the Baeck's Rabbi's Diaspora. That's really difficult to say after 3 glasses of wine. Next time, can we organise it so that I speak before dinner? It's really much better. I'll carry on. So, actually, this is starting to, without my glasses, I can still read this, which also means I've probably had too much wine. So, anyway, let me get back to the focus. So hopefully, though we might engage with relatively small numbers directly, I think between us we have a big global impact that we can achieve. So a little bit about how global citizenship works with the development of our new Holocaust galleries. They'll open in London hopefully in September 2020, and the approach to our new galleries is quite different from the current Holocaust exhibition at IWM London in certain ways. So we plan to cover a global perspective as the Holocaust echoes across the world through its sheer intensity and breadth of its geographical scope. What we've found in our front-end evaluation is that audiences know 2 things, Hitler and Auschwitz. And we want to make sure that our audiences understand that it was a pan-Europe part of the Second World War conflict. We want to broaden the understanding by looking at this pan-European process. Underlying this, of course, is mass complicity and also passive resistance. And we'll be talking about perpetrators more than we currently do. Within Nazi Germany, we'll look at how the whole judiciary, the teaching profession, law enforcement and medical professionals were drawn into the Nazi network of complicity as the mass deportations and logistics could not have been carried out by the SS alone. So we want to focus on the element of human agency, that what happened was due to the choices that people made, that the Holocaust was not an inevitable set of events. Our design approach will set the Holocaust within a world position and have contemporary geographical references. We want to convey the sense that the people who are responsible for these atrocities inhabit the same earth that we do, and to avoid the Holocaust becoming something that is in the abstract. This is important as the scale and brutality of the Holocaust can push it into a realm of different understanding. David Cesarani, in his last book, The Final Solution, described it as an abstract genocide, that it was floating free from a history. So we want to embed it back into the Second World War story. So we also think that our global citizenship perspective encourages vigilance, as one of our core interpretive approaches is to be clear that there was nothing inevitable about the Holocaust. It is simply too reductionist to fall back on the narrative that people at the time had largely been brainwashed. We are also challenging the misconceptions over what was known as in our national memory, we've allowed ourselves to forget that there was knowledge of what was happening. The National Council of the Polish government in exile in Britain were very clear and very vocal about it. It's not a story that's currently told in our galleries. So we'll expand the chronology covered by the galleries and look at pre-war Jewish life, what life was like across Europe, exploding the myth that there was no such thing as the Jews, and that the Jewish experience was not one homogenous community with the same experience across Europe. We'll also consider, which we've never done before, the challenges faced by the survivors, how they recovered lost lives, searched for what happened to their families, reconnected with families and relatives, and the long-term physical and mental issues, along as well with the formation of the word genocide and the new definitions of war crimes. So our narratives may raise searching questions, which from a global citizen perspective will make our audiences consider humanity and our responsibilities to each other. We will look at the global inertia with dealing with the pre-war refugees, and in response to the frequently asked question of why the resident Jews simply didn't leave Germany when they could, we'll look at the policies that prevented them being offered sanctuary. For example, Britain took just under 10,000 children in the Kindertransport, while 60,000 refugees fled Germany to British Mandate Palestine. But we are still staying true to our general approach that we take, which is that we're going to be focusing on personal stories and recounting those individual experiences to guide our audiences into a mass experience of war and conflict. We want our visitors' first encounter with the Holocaust galleries to be with people, not victims. As we did with the Holocaust exhibition, the original Holocaust exhibition, we want to convey a rich sense of those individuals and the lives that they live. The objects on display are to be seen as testament to lives lived, not just their deaths, so that the objects retrieved from mass graves, for example, do not become faceless objects, a relic, but rather as the witnesses to those lives lived. We never want to lose sight of the individual experience within the massive scale of loss and horrific statistics of the Holocaust that can be easily dismissed. So by expanding our chronological approach beyond the point of the liberation of the camps, which is where the narrative tends to end, we're engaging our audiences with the fact that the Holocaust did not exterminate the Jews, but it did change their lives forever. Returning to the life as it had been before the Holocaust was impossible for many, and yet in the post-war years, many Jewish survivors were able to build new lives and new communities in their adopted countries. So our curators feel very strongly that the notion of drawing traditional lessons from the Holocaust, that in drawing lessons from the Holocaust, there is a danger that this approach becomes the ground for broad statements to be made or to serve as parables. For example, we've seen it used in references between Trump and Hitler. Our approach is to rather interrogate the complex, to get our audiences to look at human behaviour and to understand the complexity of the context. You can imagine that that's a huge challenge. We want our audiences to be confronted with the facts of what happened and reflect on the possibility that this means that something like the Holocaust could happen again. Because in spite of our Western culture and the defences that were in place at the time, higher professional education, ration and logic, these values were totally subverted in the late 1930s and 1940s Europe. I think it's enormously important for all organisations, religious and secular, to work together to tackle low-level prejudice and ignorance that leads to murder on our streets. And partnership is all important in going forward and never assuming that silence is right. I am truly humbled to have been asked to talk to such an incredibly knowledgeable and such an important audience to the Imperial War Museum. And I look forward to seeing how Baeck College continues to thrive in the future and hope that it's the beginning of the great partnership. Please, I'm sorry to talk about the Holocaust as a celebration, but it is the intrinsic link between the two of our organisations, and it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you this evening. Thank you very much.